Good morning. So today I wanted to start a new reading vlog. I officially have only 2 more books on my TBR, which is Death in Her Hand by Ottessa Moshfegh and book 1, Blood of the Elves in the Witcher series. And I also have just a lot of books I have to get through of library loans for my e-reader that have come in. So I thought I would knock these last 2 physical books off of my TBR so I could go ahead and do what I can do for my e-reader. Basically just like spend a full week dedicated to e-reading. So I thought this is a good balance of what's left. I've made it through some classics. I'm about 100 pages through Middlemarch, and that's going to take me, honestly, probably rolling over into September to finish that one. So that one I'm not too concerned about, but I thought I would start this vlog and say hello. It's a Tuesday and you can go ahead and follow me along in my work week while I do some reading. I'm gonna start reading. My boyfriend got a new job recently, so we've been getting up at like 6 a.m. sharp on the dot, where normally I wake up at like 6:30. So I have been dedicating my mornings to reading, where he gets up and goes to work basically like within that hour. It leaves me a couple of hours to read in the morning, and I've really been enjoying that, and I've gotten through so much reading. So I've been talking for so long. I'm going to go ahead and get some reading done. Okay, I'm back with a not so great update, unfortunately. I am 25 pages into Death in Her Hands and I'm DNFing this. Basically, we just met our main heroine who finds a note in the forest while she's walking her dog Charlie that says, essentially, Magda is dead. I killed her. No one's gonna find out about it. Like, I got away with it. And our main heroine starts spiraling, which is like classic for this author. I got a sense right away, because I'm familiar with this author's work. We spent so much time talking about this author's very strong love for Charlie, her dog, and how it ran across the freeway one time and she was so scared. It was a few months after she got Charlie, and she was terrified that basically the reason she has to get up in the morning and something that's brought her love back into her life was almost ripped away from her. So right away, I'm gonna be honest, I'm familiar with this author's work. I went to doesthedogdie.com and you can type in the book or movie or whatever. And there was 4 votes for yes, so I'm not finishing this. Something I really don't enjoy in novels is animals dying or harm to children. It's like a hard DNF for me. Like, I'm reading this here about getting a new dog, learning to move on with your life and love and all of that. And like my little pug, who is a year old, like newly turned a year old, who came into my life at such a transitional point of my life where my grandmother had recently passed. I had separated from a long-term partner. And I was just in a house alone. I still had my 18-year-old sweetheart, Alfie, but I had something to pour my time into, and like that's such a important thing an animal can give you, is in the middle of chaos and turmoil, you still have to get up and walk your dog. You still have to feed it. You still have to play with it, and they're gonna do goofy things no matter how hard your life seems at the time. They're going to make you laugh still. And that's a sort of like devotion that I will constantly spend my life trying to make my dogs as happy and as comfortable as possible, because I just know I can't give back what my animals give to me. If like, that is a very small window into like why it's such a DNF for me. Like, no questions asked. I don't care who the writer is. I'm just not going to read about animal harm or the loss of an animal. It's just not for me. So I'm DNFing this one, and that's too bad. So I'm going to move on to The Blood of Elves, book 2 in the Witcher series. And I do hope I really like it. I would really like to collect all of the beautiful editions, but I do want to touch on the fact that, so I bought this a couple of years ago when I was still out west, and the list price for this was $38 Canadian, which at the time I was like, oh my God, that's so expensive. But, you know, I love it. I want it. And I had a discount being an employee at the bookstore. And then I saw some of the newer editions like continue to get released and updated, and they cost $50 now. And when I looked back, I purchased this 3 years ago, which means in the span of 3 years, there's a markup of $12 for a hardback. It is $50 for these editions now. And I just can't fathom that. I did think, because I promised to read 2 books for this vlog, that instead what I could do is read Black Cake. This has been on my list of things to read for a while now, and I just never got around to it this summer. But I've just heard so many amazing, amazing things about this book. I think I will go ahead and do that instead of just like cutting your video short, because apparently I'm a child and I can't handle one dog dying. I'm also realizing now that the lighting is not ideal in this video. Anyways, I'm gonna go hug my dogs very tightly and start The Witcher or Black Cake, or both. Okay, so I'm just realizing, I don't know if I've ever had a video go worse. So I just picked up Blood of Elves to start reading, and I picked up a FaceTime call from one of my friends who's read the series, and he was just asking me about the short stories. He knows I'm not like the biggest fan of short stories collections in general. So apparently there is a collection of short stories called Sword of Destiny that I'm supposed to read before book 1. So I'm no longer going to be reading Blood of Elves in this vlog either. So I am going to pick up Black Cake and try to salvage this video as much as I can. And I guess try to pick up another fantasy. Okay, hello again. So I thought you guys can come with me. I'm going to take you to my TBR cart, and we are going to pick out a different fantasy, and it's going to be fine. We're going to, this video's been derailed. We're going to re-rail it. Let's go. Look. Why would you ever want to read a book where this gets hurt? She's perfect. She's literally actually kind of insane, but she's perfect. You can sit with my classics if I just push them back a little bit. Hey. Okay, so disregarding Harry Potter, because like I'm getting into the fall vibes. In fact, I think today is going to be my first like proper, even though I'm reading Black Cake, which I wanted to read in the summer, I think today is going to be my first like official like kind of fall day, because I'm going to put Gilmore Girls on, which is like my fall show. Okay, she's chasing her tail and refuses to stop. So ideally, I would like to choose a fantasy that is a standalone, because I have, for the month of August, been reading book 3 in the Wheel of Time series. So like I'm in the middle of so many series. I just feel in my heart I do not need to do another series, but also with fantasy, that's tricky. So let's see. Right away, this is one I have as an ebook from the library that just came in, so I probably won't choose that because I like this book. I would like this video to be physical books. A lot of these up here have more fall going on. These are fall. I want to reread this one. I read it a couple of years ago now as an ARC, and I do want to reread that one. I have Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter, but like that's like a serial killer fantasy, which I feel screams like September, October. What I could do, I did just think of one. A lot of left field. And it technically is part of a duology, but Strange the Dreamer. So I actually don't know what this is about, but it was recommended to me so much. And then I bought book 1 and 2 for a total of 15 Canadian dollars because they were in the bargain section. And this is a chunky boy though, but I want these 2 books to last me for the week. So that is a contender. I think maybe I'll go a little bit wild and choose Belladonna. I think this is like a teen fantasy. I want to say, I truly don't know much about this one. I'm going to throw my hands up and say that I bought this because it was beautiful. But then I started hearing a lot of good things. So I chalk that up to me having great literature intuition and not to me having poor impulse control. I'm going to try a chapter of each of these. Whichever one I choose, I will continue to read, and then I will read in Black Cake, and I promise the next time I film a clip, I would have read something. It's also almost time to start work, so this was all for nothing. It's fine. I will come back and have read something. Okay, so it's the next day, and I do have a couple of reading updates. So I've gotten far enough along in Black Cake that I kind of know what's going on. So there is a brother and sister who have been on the outs for quite a while. Their names are Byron and Benny. And Benny comes back into town, and she is very clearly separated from this old life she used to have. But there is a sense of nostalgia attached to it. So we know that there's some sort of event tied to why she was so disconnected from her family. We know that their father passed a number of years ago and she did not attend the funeral, but she's back in town to attend her mother's funeral. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I have gotten to the reveal portion of the book, but I just don't know why. So the reveal happens quite early on of what the mother has been hiding, but there's some unraveling going on right now of why the mother chose to hide that. Next, I wanted to say that I chose Belladonna as the fantasy I would be reading. So between Belladonna and Strange the Dreamer, I will say that the prologue of this fantasy is what captured my attention. However, I will say Strange the Dreamer, while the prologue wasn't super exciting to me, I think the writing in that book is going to be wonderful. It was very flowery. It was very pretty. I wound up reading a little bit more than the prologue of both of these. So I wanted to talk about what Belladonna is about. I'm far enough in that I think I kind of have gathered. So we're following Signa, who right when the story starts, she is born, and right away, Death, who is kind of personified in this story, tries to take Signa for himself. She is supposed to be dead, but we kind of find out that she is unable to die at this point, or Death is unable to collect her. So he tries to come back a couple of times, but instead winds up taking her mother. This becomes sort of a theme throughout Signa's life, where she is being bounced around from guardian to guardian, who Signa does have quite an inheritance and quite a wealth surrounding her, and the guardians that continue to take her on seem to be more interested in that wealth than they do her own well-being. And unfortunately, as the guardians take her on one by one, they are all passing in unlikely ways, where Signa herself continues to live and defy death in a way. And she is down to sort of her last hope and her last kind of lineage of family that she can turn to, and she is just really hoping that there's a way to ensure that they don't meet the same fate as all of her former guardians. So all in all, I'm actually really enjoying both of these books, and I will check in when I am past, say, like the 50% mark of both of them, and just like closer to the end of the story. Okay, I'm hopping back in here to say I have finished Belladonna. It's a few hours later. And I'm not happy to report that this is not a standalone. I could have sworn when this came out, it was a standalone. But like, I guess the second one was just released this week. I'm not going to continue this series, but I did enjoy this book. I would rate it a 3 out of 5. So I went over the premise a little bit, but I will say, like, further to that, like death being a kind of sentient being in this, that we do get to spend a lot of time with death. There is like a, I don't even know if I would call it enemies to lover, but this has like a very, very prevalent B plot of romance as well. Yeah, it was fine. It was absolutely fine. But if you're wondering, I think a really good indicator is like, if you like Stephanie Garber type YA fantasy, I would definitely recommend. Or Adrienne Yan, I would recommend. This will be right up your alley. The writing style is similar. It's fast paced. It reads really quickly. So that's it for now. It's 8:30 in the morning, so I am going to read a little bit of Black Cake and then start work. Okay, I'm checking in because I'm almost halfway through. I've gotten into part 2 of Black Cake, and honestly, this has turned into a bit of a reading day. So with work, I am kind of waiting on some numbers to come back before I'm able to progress in my project that I'm working on. So I'm about 200 pages from finishing this, so I might actually wind up finishing this today. But what I will say is I'm so invested. The writing is so well paced, but also the chapters are very short, so they're able to kind of create that almost compulsive page turning effect while it being a more character-driven story, which is not easy to do. So I just wanted to do that little update, and I think the next time I check in is going to be later on today when I actually finish this book. So for now, I will say I'm really enjoying it. I think this has the ability to be a high 4-star, if not a 5-star. So yeah, I am loving this right now. Hello, please don't mind. Emily Gilmore. On the side, I'm coming back in to say that I finished Black Cake and I really like it. It did not make me cry, but I did come very, very close. But it is a book I would recommend for so many people and for so many reasons. So I already touched on what it's about, but we are following Benny and Benton. Benton is the brother, and he is a successful academic who has kind of reached a stardom of sorts. He's interviewed on TV shows. He is very well known in the public sphere, but has hit kind of a rut in his professional career, academia-wise. And then we are following Benny, who is the daughter that kind of got into a little rut with her parents and decided to drop out of college and move to New York City so she could open her own cafe. And years have passed since then, and she is really just struggling. Simultaneously, we are following their mother, who is telling them stories through audio tapes from her lawyer after she has passed. And we are learning about the whole life she had before she really embraced motherhood. Of course, to her children, she always was their mother and seemed pretty simply to be a pretty cut and dry defined by motherhood. And I found that to be such an interesting take already as children, how our idea of our parents kind of begins and ends with parenthood. And I think that Charmaine Wilkerson did a really great job in giving such a full perspective of the mother, all of the children, and the lives we have outside of our family relationships. Kind of the first part 1 and part 2 deal a lot with Benny and their mother before she re-identified herself a few times, and more the latter half had to do with all of those stories coming together. I would say in terms of narrative, if you enjoy Taylor Jenkins' style of writing, this is something that I would definitely recommend. The writing is so accessible, the story is so accessible, and even though Wilkerson really takes their time letting us get to know the multifaceted nature of what it means to be human for each and every one of these characters, what they do as well is set the pacing, and the writing style allows for it to still feel so compulsively readable. So I would say that style of writing is kind of what I would liken to Wilkerson's. But the enormity of what Wilkerson tackles and is able to do justice to in this book, I would definitely recommend. I am bouncing right now between a 4.5 or a 4-star. So just personally for me, the only thing that is stopping it from being a 5-star was I would have liked for it to be a little bit longer. I feel like there was some aspects of their mother's childhood that I would have liked to know more about, more like the political side of things that was happening, and delving a little more into interracial marriages at that point in time, I thought would have been interesting. And though Wilkerson definitely touches on it and the effects it has on everyone growing up on Covey, I think it would have been more interesting if we could have delved more into it from Lynn's perspective, which is Covey's father, or Benny and Benson's grandfather. So that just would have been interesting. I would have liked that a little bit more, but in its total, this is an amazing book. It's an accessible book. I'm so glad that I picked it up randomly for this reading vlog. And honestly, for the dumpster fire that this video started out as, I am super happy with how it ended. So that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with me, as this was just one of the most garbage starts to a reading week that I've had, but it ended really, really well with one of my favorite books that I've read so far in 2023. So that's gonna be it for me now. I am going to watch some more Gilmore Girls and hopefully get started on this project at work. But that's it for me this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.